In the fading light of a winter evening, Tom Martinez wiped the grease from his calloused hands and locked up his struggling auto repair shop. That's when he spotted her, a well-dressed woman standing helplessly beside her Mercedes, steam rising from under the hood. Despite the mounting bills on his desk and his daughter's upcoming medical expenses, Tom did what his father had always taught him: help those in need, expecting nothing in return. He fixed her car and refused payment, not knowing she was Sarah Kingston, CEO of the largest tech company in Silicon Valley. As Tom drove home that night in his old pickup truck, he had no idea that his simple act of kindness was about to change his life forever. Could one selfless deed really rewrite the story of a man who had given up on his dreams? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Tom's alarm buzzed at 4:30 a.m., same as it had for the past 15 years. The darkness outside his window was familiar company as he eased out of bed, careful not to wake Lucy in the next room. Their small apartment above Martinez Auto Repair wasn't much, but it was home. The floorboards creaked beneath his feet, a symphony he knew by heart. In the cramped kitchen, he started the coffee maker his father had given him years ago. The ancient machine sputtered and wheezed, much like his shop's finances these days. While it brewed, Tom sorted through the pile of bills on the counter: medical invoices, insurance statements, rent notices, each one a paper reminder of the weight on his shoulders. His fingers lingered on Lucy's latest hospital bill, the red past due stamp seeming to glow in the dim light. Lucy's rare autoimmune condition had appeared 3 years ago, right after her mother passed. The doctors called it juvenile dermatomyositis, a name that took Tom weeks to pronounce correctly. The treatment costs were astronomical, but what choice did he have? She was all he had left. He heard soft footsteps behind him and quickly slipped the bills into his pocket. "Dad, you're up early again." Lucy stood in her pajamas, her thin frame leaning against the doorframe. At 16, she looked so much like her mother it sometimes caught him off guard. "Just getting ready for work, sweetheart. Why don't you go back to sleep? It's still early." She shook her head, her dark curls bouncing slightly. "I couldn't sleep. The joints were acting up again." She tried to smile, but Tom saw the pain in her eyes. "Besides, I wanted to help you with the inventory today. You promised, remember?" Tom did remember. Lucy had inherited his love for cars, despite, or perhaps because of, growing up in the shop. Even on her bad days, she'd sit in his office, reading repair manuals or sketching designs for custom paint jobs they both knew they couldn't afford. "Your health comes first," he said, pulling out a chair for her. "But if you're feeling up to it later, we'll see." As they shared breakfast, simple toast and eggs, Tom's mind wandered to the woman from last night. Her Mercedes had been top of the line, probably worth more than his shop's entire yearly revenue. The repair had been simple enough, a blown head gasket, though she'd caught it early before any serious damage occurred. He'd worked quickly, efficiently, guided by decades of experience. And his father's voice in his head: "Every car tells a story, son. Listen carefully enough, and you'll hear it." The woman had insisted on paying, pulling out a sleek wallet that probably cost more than his toolbox. But Tom had refused. Something in her eyes, a mixture of worry and resignation he recognized, from his mirror, had touched him. "Just pay it forward," he'd said, the words coming naturally. Lucy's voice pulled him back to the present. "Dad? You're doing that thing again where you stare at your coffee like it holds the secrets of the universe." He chuckled, reaching across to squeeze her hand. "Just thinking about work, mija. Mr. Johnson's Chevy needs a transmission rebuild, and I've got to figure out where to source the parts without breaking his budget." "You always try to help everyone," Lucy said, her voice a mixture of pride and concern. "But who helps you, Dad?" The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken worries. Tom busied himself with clearing the dishes, buying time before answering. "We help each other, Lucy. That's what community is about. Your abuelo taught me that." As if on cue, the morning light began filtering through their small window, casting long shadows across the worn linoleum floor. Tom glanced at his watch. 5:45 a.m. Time to open the shop. Downstairs, the familiar scent of oil and metal greeted him. The shop wasn't much to look at. 3 bays, basic equipment, walls covered in faded car posters and his father's old certificates. But every tool had its place, every surface was clean, and every job was done right. Martinez Auto Repair might not be fancy, but it had a reputation for honest work at fair prices. Tom flipped through his appointment book, the pages dog-eared and coffee-stained. 6 jobs scheduled today, not counting walk-ins. It would be tight, but he'd make it work. He always did. The morning sun was just beginning to warm the concrete floor when he heard Lucy's careful steps on the stairs. She'd changed into her shop clothes, worn jeans and one of his old work shirts, rolled up at the sleeves. In her hands, she carried their twin lunchboxes, packed with the sandwiches they'd made last night. "I'm feeling better now," she announced, setting the lunches on his desk. "And I already did my morning exercises. So about that inventory." Tom looked at his daughter, really looked at her. Behind the brave smile and eager eyes, he saw the fatigue that never quite left, the slight tremor in her hands that the medications couldn't completely control. But he also saw her mother's determination, his father's work ethic, and a spirit that refused to be defined by illness. "Okay," he said finally, "but we take it slow and you tell me the moment you need to rest." Lucy's face lit up, and for a moment the weight of unpaid bills and uncertain futures lifted from Tom's shoulders. They had each other, they had the shop, and they had their pride in honest work. Maybe, he thought, as they began their day together, that was enough. Sarah Kingston stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her penthouse office, watching the San Francisco fog roll in across the bay. 52 stories up, the world below seemed distant, almost theoretical. Her tablet chimed with another meeting. Request, the 4th this hour, but she let it wait. Last night's encounter with the mechanic had stirred something in her, a memory of a different life. Her fingers absently traced the edge of her tablet's screen, its surface reflecting her. Carefully composed image, tailored suit, elegant jewelry, not a hair out of place. The woman who now ran Kingston Technologies, the fastest-growing technology company in Silicon Valley. Yet this morning, all she could think about was the grease-stained hands of a man who'd helped her without expecting anything in return. "Ms. Chen?" Her assistant's voice came through the intercom. "The board is waiting in the conference room." Sarah squared her shoulders, a gesture learned through decades of being the only woman in rooms full of men who doubted her. "I'll be right there." The boardroom fell silent as she entered, 12 pairs of eyes following her progress to the head of the table. These men had known her for years, had watched her transform her father's modest software company into a tech empire. Yet some still looked at her like she was the same 24-year-old who'd inherited a struggling business after her parents' accident. "Gentlemen," she began, her voice carrying the quiet authority that had become her trademark. "Shall we begin?" 2 hours later, Sarah sat alone in her office again, mechanical pencil tapping against her desk, an old habit from engineering school. The board meeting had gone well. It always did. She'd learned long ago how to speak their language, how to present innovation in terms of profit margins and market share. But today, her thoughts kept drifting to that small auto shop. Martinez Auto Repair, the sign had read, the letters faded but the windows spotless. The owner, Tom, he'd said his name was, had worked with a quiet competence that reminded her of her father. No wasted movements, no unnecessary words, just the sure hands of someone who understood machines the way she understood code. She opened her browser and typed in the shop's name. The website was basic. Address, hours, services offered, but the reviews told a story. Honest work, fair prices. Fix my car when 3 other shops couldn't. Help me out when I couldn't afford repairs. Each comment painted a picture of a man who valued integrity over profit, a rare quality in any industry. A knock at her door interrupted her research. "Come in." David Zhang, her chief of operations, entered with his characteristic energy. At 65, he was one of the few people who'd known her father, who'd seen her grow from a precocious child tinkering with circuit boards to the CEO she'd become. "Sarah," he said, dropping into the chair across from her desk. "You seem distracted today. That's not like you." She smiled slightly. David had been her mentor, her father's friend, and now her most trusted advisor. If anyone would understand, it would be him. "I had an interesting experience last night," she began, telling him about the broken-down Mercedes, the mechanic who'd helped her without hesitation, the strange feeling of connection to a world she'd left behind long ago. David listened quietly, his expression thoughtful. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair. "You know what this reminds me of? Your father's old story about the bicycle repair shop." Sarah felt her throat tighten. She hadn't thought about that story in years. Before he'd made it big in software, her father had been struggling to make ends meet. One day, his bicycle, his only transportation to work, had broken down. A local repair shop owner had fixed it for free, telling him to pay it forward when he could. That act of kindness had kept her father employed, allowing him to eventually start the company that would become Kingston Technologies. "We've been talking about expanding our corporate responsibility programs," David continued carefully, "and our luxury vehicle division needs someone who truly understands cars, not just spreadsheets." Sarah looked at him sharply. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that sometimes the best business decisions aren't made in boardrooms." He stood, straightening his jacket. "Just something to think about." After David left, Sarah pulled up the satellite view of Martinez Auto Repair. The building was small, tucked between a laundromat and a discount furniture store. The neighborhood had seen better days, but there was something genuine about it, something real in a way her world of glass and steel often wasn't. She thought about Tom's refusal to accept payment, the quiet dignity in his stance, the way he'd treated her like a person rather than a potential profit. In her world, everyone wanted something. Every kindness came with strings attached. Every favor expected repayment with interest. Her tablet chimed again. Another meeting, another decision, another deal to close. But for the first time in years, Sarah Kingston, CEO of Kingston Technologies, found herself wondering if success measured in stock prices and market caps was the only kind that mattered. She picked up her phone and called her personal assistant. "Cancel my afternoon appointments and contact our aviation department. I need a helicopter ready for tomorrow morning." "A helicopter, Ms. Chen?" "Yes," she said, looking out at the fog-shrouded city. "I think it's time to pay it forward." The morning started like any other at Martinez Auto Repair. Tom had just finished explaining to Mrs. Rodriguez why her Civic's timing belt needed replacement when the first tremors shook the building. The coffee in his world's best dad mug rippled, tools rattled against their metal holdings, and the ancient desk fan wobbled precariously. "Dios mío!" Mrs. Rodriguez clutched her chest. Earthquake. But Tom recognized the distinctive sound growing louder overhead. Rotor blades. The wash of air intensified, scattering leaves and debris across his normally pristine parking lot. Through the shop's wide doors, he watched in disbelief as a sleek black helicopter descended, its polished surface reflecting the morning sun like liquid obsidian. Lucy appeared beside him, her eyes wide. "Dad, there's a helicopter landing in our parking lot." "I can see that, Mija." He placed a protective hand on her shoulder, watching as the aircraft settled with precise control between his shop and the laundromat next door. The rotors slowed, and in the sudden quiet Tom could hear his heart pounding. The helicopter's door opened with hydraulic smoothness, and a familiar figure emerged. Tom blinked twice, sure he was seeing things, but no. It was her, the woman, from last night, though now she wore a tailored business suit instead of the casual attire from their previous encounter. She moved with purposeful grace, ducking under the slowing rotors with practiced ease. By now, a small crowd had gathered. Old Mr. Way from the laundromat stood in his doorway, mouth agape. The teenagers from the corner store had their phones out recording everything. Mrs. Rodriguez crossed herself, muttering prayers in Spanish. "Mr. Martinez!" the woman called out as she approached, her voice carrying easily across the distance. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." Tom found his voice. "Just a regular morning of timing belts and tire rotations, though helicopter landings aren't usually part of our services." She smiled, a genuine smile that transformed her professional demeanor. "I'm Sarah Kingston. We met last night, though I didn't properly introduce myself then. The CEO of Kingston Technologies," Lucy whispered, tugging at Tom's sleeve. "Dad, she's like one of the most powerful women in tech. I did a report on her for school last semester." Sarah's attention shifted to Lucy, her expression softening. "And you must be Lucy. Your father mentioned you last night, said you know more about cars than most mechanics he's met." Tom watched the interaction with growing confusion. He'd helped plenty of people over the years, but none had ever returned. "Via helicopter. Ms. Kingston, I appreciate you coming back, but if this is about payment for last night's repair, please call me Sarah. And no, this isn't about payment. At least not in the way you're thinking." She glanced around at their audience. "Perhaps we could talk inside." Tom nodded, leading them into his office. Lucy followed, still wide-eyed, while Mrs. Rodriguez and the other onlookers pressed their faces against the shop's windows. The office was small, with barely enough room for his desk and 3 chairs, but Tom kept it meticulously organized, a habit from his father's days. Sarah settled into one of the chairs, seemingly unbothered by the humble surroundings. "Mr. Martinez." "Tom." "Please." "Tom," she smiled again. "What you did last night, it reminded me of something. Years ago, when my father was struggling to start his company, someone helped him. A bicycle repair shop owner fixed his only means of transportation for free. That simple act of kindness kept him employed, allowed him to pursue his dreams. Without it, Kingston Technologies might never have existed." She paused, reaching for her tablet. "I've spent the morning looking into your shop, Tom. Your reputation for honest work, for helping people who can't afford repairs elsewhere, it's remarkable. But I also know you're struggling. The neighborhood's changing, parts are getting more expensive, and—" her eyes flickered briefly to Lucy. "There are always unexpected expenses in life." Tom stiffened. "We manage." "I'm sure you do. But what? If you could do more? What if you could help more people on a larger scale?" She tapped her tablet, bringing up a holographic display that filled the small office with floating images. "Kingston Technologies has a division dedicated to luxury vehicles, everything from classic cars to cutting-edge electric vehicles. We need someone to oversee their maintenance and restoration, someone who understands both the mechanics and the human element, someone with integrity." Lucy gasped softly as the implications became clear. Tom felt his throat tighten. "Ms. Kingston." "Sarah, I appreciate the offer, but I'm just a neighborhood mechanic. I wouldn't know the first thing about running a corporate division. You know cars, you know people. The rest can be taught." She leaned forward. "The position comes with full benefits, including comprehensive medical coverage. And," she brought up another image, "a modest but beautiful house with a 2-car garage. We provide executive housing near our facility in Palo Alto." Tom's mind raced. Comprehensive medical coverage. A house. A chance to give Lucy the life she deserved. It seemed too good to be true. As if reading his thoughts, Sarah added softly, "Sometimes kindness has a way of coming back around, Tom. You helped me without expecting anything in return. Now let me do the same for you." The office fell silent, except for the distant sound of the helicopter's engines cooling down. Through the window, Tom could see his father's old sign swaying gently in the breeze. Martinez Auto Repair had been his whole world for so long. Could he really leave it behind? Lucy's hand found his, squeezing gently. When he looked at her, he saw not just hope in her eyes, but understanding. Whatever he decided, she would support him, just like she always had. "I'd need time to think about it," he said finally. "This shop, it's not just a business, it's my father's legacy." Sarah nodded, standing. "Of course, take the weekend to consider it. But Tom," she reached into her jacket and pulled out a business card, setting it on his desk. "Legacies aren't just about preserving the past. Sometimes they're about building a better future." As she walked back to her helicopter, leaving Tom and Lucy standing in the doorway of their shop, neither of them noticed Mrs. Rodriguez wiping tears from her eyes or old Mr. Way nodding approvingly. They were too busy watching their simple world transform, one rotor blade revolution at a time. Tom adjusted his tie for the third time, feeling like an imposter in the suit Lucy had insisted he buy for the occasion. The Kingston Technologies campus sprawled before him, a testament to modern architecture with its sweeping glass curves and manicured landscapes. His weathered pickup truck looked comically out of place in the visitors' parking lot, surrounded by vehicles worth more than his entire shop. "Stop fidgeting, Dad," Lucy said beside him, her own excitement barely contained. She'd insisted on coming along, and Sarah had welcomed the idea. "You look great." The weekend had passed in a blur of conversations, calculations, and sleepless nights. The practical part of Tom's brain had catalogued every detail of Sarah's offer, the salary, more than he'd made in the past 3 years combined, the benefits, including specialized treatments for Lucy's condition, the housing allowance. But it was the less tangible aspects that kept him awake. Leaving his father's shop, uprooting Lucy from her school, stepping into a world as foreign to him as a spacecraft. A familiar figure approached through the glass doors, Sarah Kingston, looking every bit the CEO in a perfectly tailored pantsuit. "Tom, Lucy, welcome to Kingston Technologies." Her smile was warm, genuine. "Ready for the tour?" The lobby alone was larger than his entire shop. Employees moved purposefully across. The polished floors, their badges displaying names and titles Tom couldn't begin to comprehend. A massive screen displayed real-time data from Kingston's global operations, numbers flowing like digital rivers. "Impressive, isn't it?" Sarah guided them toward a private elevator. "But wait until you see the automotive division." The elevator descended, and Tom's breath caught as the doors opened. Before him stretched an underground facility that would make any car enthusiast weep. Pristine classic cars lined one wall. A 1957 Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Gullwing, a Ferrari 250 GTO, a Shelby Cobra, each one maintained in museum-quality condition. The opposite side showcased the latest in automotive technology, prototype electric vehicles, experimental hydrogen cells, cutting-edge hybrid systems. "This is—" Tom trailed off, unable to find words. "This would be your domain," Sarah said, quietly. "Our collection needs someone who understands that these aren't just machines, they're history, art and innovation combined." Lucy wheeled slowly past a vintage Aston Martin, her hand hovering inches from its immaculate surface. "Dad, look at the paintwork. It's like liquid silver." A small team of technicians worked nearby, their movements precise and coordinated. They wore crisp uniforms with the Kingston Technologies logo, using tools that made Tom's equipment look ancient. Yet watching them work, he recognized the fundamental truth that transcended fancy facilities and expensive machines: the intimate dialogue between mechanic and machine. "Mr. Martinez," a tall man in his 60s approached, extending his hand. "David Zhang, Chief Operations Officer. Sarah's told me about your work." Tom shook his hand, noting the calluses that suggested David was no stranger to hands-on work. "Please, call me Tom. Come, let me show you something." David led them to a separate area, where a 1965 Mustang sat partially disassembled. "We acquired this recently. Previous owner claimed it was numbers matching, all original parts. What do you see?" Tom moved closer, his practiced eye scanning the vehicle. Within moments, the incongruities jumped out at him. The engine blocks, period correct, but it's not original to the car. See the stamping. Wrong font for 65. The carburetor's been rebuilt with modern parts, good quality but not authentic, and he bent down examining the frame. There's evidence of repair work here, accident damage, probably from the 70s. David's eyes lit up. Exactly what I found. Sarah said you had a good eye. Lucy beamed with pride. Dad can tell a car's history just by looking at it. He always says every vehicle tells a story. A philosophy we share, Sarah interjected. Our clients trust us with vehicles worth millions. But more importantly, they trust us with their stories. That Mustang? It belonged to a woman's late father. She doesn't care about its market value. She cares about preserving his memory. Tom understood that. Every car in his shop carried similar stories. First dates, family road trips, hard-earned achievements. The tools might be different here, but the fundamental truth remained the same. They continued the tour, each new area more impressive than the last. A state-of-the-art diagnostic lab, a custom fabrication workshop with 3D printers capable of producing rare parts, a research facility developing sustainable technologies for classic car conversion. The position would involve overseeing all of this, Sarah explained. But more importantly, it would mean building a program to make luxury vehicle maintenance more accessible. Think of it as bringing your philosophy of honest work and fair prices to a larger scale. Tom paused, processing her words. You want to make luxury car maintenance more accessible? Why not? Technology should elevate everyone, not just those who can afford it. Your shop proved that quality service and community responsibility can coexist. We want to scale that model. Lucy, who had been quietly observing everything, suddenly spoke up, like how you help Mrs. Rodriguez spread her payments out when her car needs work, or how you taught Mr. Way basic maintenance so he could avoid expensive repairs. Sarah smiled at Lucy. Exactly. Your father understands something many in this industry forget. Cars aren't just status symbols. They're how people get to work, take their kids to school, live their lives. We want to bring that understanding to luxury vehicles. Tom looked around the facility again, seeing it with new eyes. Not just as a showcase of automotive excellence, but as a potential force for change. Yet doubt still nagged at him. It's a beautiful vision, but I'm just a neighborhood mechanic. All this, he gestured at the high-tech equipment, it's a bit overwhelming. Technical skills can be taught, David said firmly. Character can't. We have plenty of engineers who understand the machines. We need someone who understands the people. As if to emphasize his point, a young technician approached, with a tablet, asking Tom's opinion on the Mustang's restoration plan. Without thinking, Tom fell into his element, discussing options, suggesting approaches, drawing on decades of experience. Lucy watched with a knowing smile as her father's initial nervousness melted away, replaced by the quiet confidence he always showed in his shop. By the time they headed back to the elevator, Tom's mind was spinning with possibilities. The ability to help more people, to ensure Lucy's medical care, to expand his father's legacy of honest work and fair dealing. It was all within reach. Yet the weight of decision still pressed heavy on his shoulders. Sarah seemed to sense his thoughts. Take your time, Tom. This isn't just a job offer, it's a life change. Think it over. Discuss it with Lucy. The position will be here when you're ready. As they drove home in his old pickup, Lucy was uncharacteristically quiet. Finally, she said, Dad, remember what Abuelo used to say about opportunities? Tom smiled, hearing his father's voice in his memory. Opportunity doesn't always knock wearing a suit and tie, mijo. Sometimes it shows up with grease on its hands. Yeah, Lucy said softly, but sometimes it does both. Evening light filtered through the dusty windows of Martinez Auto Repair, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. Tom stood in the center of the shop, his father's keys heavy in his palm. Every scratch on their brass surface told a story. 30 years of early mornings, late nights, and countless lives touched through honest work and fair deals. "I thought I'd find you here." He turned to find Sarah in the doorway, her executive attire exchanged for casual wear, though she still carried herself with natural grace. She'd been stopping by regularly since the tour, usually near closing time, often bringing coffee and questions about various aspects of the business. "Just thinking," Tom said, pocketing the keys, "though I've been doing a lot of that lately." Sarah stepped inside, her heels clicking softly on the concrete. "May I?" She gestured to a nearby workbench. Tom quickly wiped it clean with a shop rag. "It's not exactly executive furniture. Sometimes the most important conversations happen in the most ordinary places." She settled onto the bench, looking around the shop with genuine interest. "Tell me about your father." The request caught him off guard. Most people asked about the job offer, about his decision, about the logistics of transition. Nobody had asked about Miguel Martinez, the man who'd built this place from nothing. Tom paused, collecting his thoughts. He was the kind of man who'd fix a single mother's car for free, then spend hours teaching her basic maintenance, so she wouldn't have to rely on mechanics who might take advantage of her. He believed that every customer was family, and you don't cheat family. Sarah nodded, her eyes falling on the wall of faded photographs. "Is that him?" She pointed to a picture of a younger Tom and his father, both grinning beneath the newly installed shop sign. "Yeah. Opening day, 1985. He'd saved for 15 years to buy this place." Tom moved closer to the photo, remembering. "He used to say that a mechanic's job isn't just fixing cars, it's fixing people's lives. A working car means getting to work, getting kids to school, making doctor's appointments." "Like Lucy's appointments?" Sarah asked softly. Tom's hand instinctively went to his pocket, where he kept his daughter's latest medical bills. "Yeah. After Maria, my wife, passed, the medical expenses hit hard. But Dad was still here then. He helped us keep going, taught Lucy everything he knew about cars, said it would give her something to focus on besides being sick." "He sounds like a wise man." He was. Tom turned to face her. "That's what makes this so hard. This shop isn't just a business, it's his legacy. Every tool, every repair manual, every customer relationship, it's all built on his foundation." Sarah stood, moving to examine the wall of customer photos, countless, smiling faces next to their repaired vehicles. "Tom, what do you see when you look at these pictures?" "Family," he answered without hesitation. "Every one of them has a story." "Exactly. Your father's legacy isn't these four walls or these tools. It's the lives he touched, the values he passed on, the way he taught you, and through you, Lucy, to care about people as much as machines." She turned to face him. "What if you could extend that legacy, reach more families, help more people, all while giving Lucy the medical care she needs?" Tom ran a hand along his workbench, feeling every nick and scratch earned over decades of service. "And what happens to the people here? Mrs. Rodriguez can barely afford repairs as it is. Mr. Way's laundromat depends on his delivery van, the one I maintain at cost. What if we didn't have to choose?" Sarah's voice took on an excited edge. "I've been thinking about this, Tom. What if we turned Martinez Auto Repair into a training center, a place where we could teach new mechanics? Your father's values while maintaining service to the community?" Tom looked at her sharply. "What do you mean?" "Kingston Technologies has a foundation for community initiatives. We could fund the shop's conversion into a training facility, keep it running, keep serving the neighborhood, but also use it to train mechanics in both technical skills and ethical business practices. Your father's philosophy of honest work and fair dealing could influence a whole new generation." The idea hit Tom like a physical force. He sat heavily on his stool, mind racing with possibilities. "You do that? This isn't just about getting you to work for us, Tom. What you and your father built here, it matters. It deserves to be preserved and expanded." She stepped closer, her expression earnest. You wouldn't be abandoning his legacy. You'd be growing it. Through the shop's windows, Tom could see Lucy in the office doing her homework under the familiar fluorescent lights. She'd been stronger lately, the new medication finally showing results. But each pill cost more than most of his customers' repairs. "There's something else you should know," Sarah said, following his gaze. "Kingston Technologies has a partnership with Stanford Medical Center, their autoimmune research division. They're doing promising work with cases like Lucy's." Tom felt his throat tighten. "You looked into that?" "Of course I did." She smiled softly. "I told you, every car tells a story, but so does every person who fixes them." The evening light had faded to dusk, the shop's shadows deepening. In the office, Lucy had fallen asleep over her books, looking peaceful in a way she rarely did during her bad days. Through the windows, Tom could see old Mr. Way closing up his laundromat, Mrs. Rodriguez walking home with her groceries, the everyday rhythm of the neighborhood he'd known all his life. "I need to think about it," he said finally. "Really think about it, not just the job, but the training center idea. It's a lot to process." Sarah nodded, gathering her purse. "Take all the time you need." She paused at the door, looking back. "You know, my father used to say that the hardest decisions are usually the ones most worth making." After she left, Tom sat in the growing darkness, his father's keys in his hand. The metal had warmed to his touch, familiar and comforting. He thought about his father's favorite saying, "Sometimes the best way to honor the past is to build a better future." In the office, Lucy stirred, wincing slightly as she stretched her stiff joints. Watching her, Tom realized that maybe the real question wasn't whether he could leave his father's legacy, but whether he could make it grow into something even greater. The house keys felt foreign in Tom's hand, too light, too new, too different from the weathered brass he'd known for decades. The real estate agent had called it a modest executive home, but to Tom and Lucy, it was a mansion. 4 bedrooms, 3 baths and a 2-car garage that was bigger than their old apartment. "Dad!" Lucy's voice echoed through the empty rooms. "Come see my room. It has a window seat." Tom smiled, following her voice up the carpeted stairs. The morning sun streamed through large windows, illuminating spaces that still felt more like a dream than reality. Lucy sat in the window seat of what would be her room, gazing out at the pristine Palo Alto neighborhood. "The doctor said I could use this space for my morning exercises," she said, running her hand along the cushioned seat. "And look, you can see the mountains from here." The mention of the doctor brought Tom back to yesterday's appointment at Stanford Medical Center. The specialist, one of the top researchers in juvenile dermatomyositis, had spent 2 hours reviewing Lucy's case. "We can do better than just managing symptoms," she'd said, outlining a treatment plan that would have been impossible on a mechanic's salary. A knock at the front door interrupted his thoughts. Sarah stood on the porch, holding a plant in one hand and a folder in the other. "Housewarming tradition," she said, offering the plant. "It's a peace lily, supposedly good for new beginnings. You didn't have to." Tom started, but Sarah was already moving past him, her energy filling the empty space. "Lucy, are you up for a small adventure?" she called out. "The design team finished setting up your office at the training center." Tom blinked. "Her office?" Sarah's eyes sparkled. "Well, every program director of youth outreach needs an office, right?" Lucy appeared at the top of the stairs, her face lighting up. "Really? I get an office?" "The training center was your father's idea, but you're the one who suggested reaching out to high schools for the apprenticeship program." Sarah set the folder on the kitchen counter. "The board loved your proposal, by the way. Turning wrenches, changing lives. Perfect tagline." Tom watched his daughter practically float down the stairs, her movements easier now with the new medication. The changes of the past month still felt surreal. The sale of the shop, with a deed restriction ensuring it would remain a community service center. The move, his new position at Kingston Technologies, and most importantly, Lucy's improved health. Before, We head to the center, Sarah said, opening the folder. There's something else we need to discuss. She pulled out a set of photographs, familiar faces from the old neighborhood. Mrs. Rodriguez's daughter got accepted to community college. She'll need reliable transportation. Her Civic's on its last legs, Tom said automatically, then caught himself. That wasn't his concern anymore, was it? Exactly. The foundation would like to help, but we need someone who understands both the technical and personal aspects. Someone who knows that it's not just about fixing a car, it's about fixing a life. The echo of his father's words wasn't lost on Tom. What are you suggesting? The training center's first project. Mrs. Rodriguez's daughter gets reliable transportation, our apprentices get hands-on experience, and the community sees that Martinez Auto Repair's spirit lives on. She paused, watching him carefully. If you're interested in overseeing it, of course. Lucy squeezed her father's arm. Like Abuelo always said, the best tools in a mechanic's box are his heart and his hands, Tom finished, smiling at the memory. Okay, but we do it right. Full restoration, not just repairs, and we involve the community. I already spoke with Mr. Way, Sarah said. He's offered to handle the food for our first community open house. Says he misses having you right next door, but loves what we're doing with the training program. As they drove to the center in Tom's new company car, a modest hybrid that he'd specifically chosen, he noticed Lucy typing rapidly on her phone. Homework? Updates for the center's social media, she said. People want to know what's happening with the apprenticeship program. Ms. Kingston says transparency builds trust. Tom glanced in the rearview mirror at Sarah, who was following in. Her own car. A month ago, she'd been a stranger in an expensive Mercedes. Now she was, what? His boss, certainly. A mentor to Lucy, unexpectedly. And something else he wasn't quite ready to define. The training center came into view, still Martinez Auto Repair on the outside, but transformed within. The 3 original service bays had been expanded to 5, each equipped with state-of-the-art tools alongside carefully preserved vintage equipment. So students learn both, Tom had insisted, the old ways and the new. The office where Lucy used to do her homework was now a classroom, complete with diagnostic computers and a massive screen for virtual training. But Tom's father's certificate still hung on the walls, alongside photos of the community and the shop's history. Mr. Martinez! A group of students from the first apprenticeship class rushed to greet them. Most were from the neighborhood. Kids who'd grown up watching Tom work and now had a chance to learn the trade themselves. Starting with Mrs. Rodriguez's car today, Tom announced, falling easily into teacher mode. First rule of restoration. Listen to what the car tells you, the students chorused, making Lucy grin. Sarah touched Tom's arm lightly. I have meetings this afternoon, but dinner later. There's a new Italian place that just opened near your house. Lucy can invite that new friend from Stanford Medical's teen support group. Tom watched his daughter lead the apprentices through the initial inspection. A process, her confidence growing with each day of better health. He thought about the peace lily in their new house, about his father's keys that now opened a door to something larger than himself, about the woman beside him who had seen value not just in his skills, but in his values. Dinner sounds good, he said softly. And Sarah, thank you. Not just for the job or Lucy's treatment, but for understanding what this place means, what it can become. She smiled, squeezing his arm gently. Sometimes the best investments aren't in buildings or equipment. They're in people who never forget where they came from, even as they build something new. Through the open bay doors, Tom could see the morning sun illuminating both the gleaming new equipment and his father's old workbench, now used for teaching. The contrast didn't seem jarring anymore. Instead, it felt right, a bridge between past and future, between legacy and possibility, between what was and what could be. Lucy's voice rang out clear and confident. Okay, team, let's show Mrs. Rodriguez's daughter what Martinez Auto Repair can do. And in that moment, Tom knew with absolute certainty that his father would have approved. Tom adjusted his corporate ID badge for the 5th time that morning, still uncomfortable with how it clipped to his tailored shirt. 3 months into his new position at Kingston Technologies, and some things still felt like wearing someone else's clothes. "The board meeting starts in 10 minutes, Mr. Martinez," his assistant Jennifer reminded him. Even that was an adjustment, having an assistant being called Mr. Martinez instead of just Tom or "Hey, mechanic." He gathered his presentation materials, trying to ignore the whispers that followed him down the sleek hallway. Despite Sarah's support and his undeniable expertise with the luxury vehicle division, not everyone welcomed the former neighborhood mechanic's rapid rise to executive status. "Did you hear?" a voice carried from around the corner. "He's dating the CEO now. That's why she created this position for him. Please, have you seen his proposal for democratizing luxury car maintenance? It'll tank our profit margins, but Kingston won't hear a word against him." Tom's grip tightened on his tablet, but he kept walking. He'd faced skepticism before, when he'd taken over his father's shop at 25, when he'd become a single dad, when he'd managed Lucy's illness on a mechanic's salary. This was just another obstacle to overcome. The boardroom fell silent as he entered. 12 faces turned to watch him, some curious, some skeptical, some openly hostile. Bradford Wells, head of traditional luxury services, barely concealed his sneer. "Mr. Martinez," Bradford drawled, "how kind of you to join us. We were just discussing your innovative approach to our premium services." Tom took his seat, noting Sarah's absence. She was at a tech conference in Tokyo. Part of him was glad. He needed to fight this battle himself. "Innovation is why Ms. Kingston hired me," Tom replied evenly, launching his presentation. "Let's look at the numbers." The screen filled with data, customer satisfaction ratings, maintenance costs, market penetration statistics. "Our pilot program at Martinez Training Center has reduced maintenance costs by 35% while maintaining luxury service standards. Customer retention has increased by 48%. Bradford leaned forward. "By turning our premium service centers into glorified community garages, you're diluting the brand." "No," Tom countered, switching to customer testimonials. "We're expanding it. Look at James Chen, CEO of Pacific Trust. He brought his Ferrari in for standard maintenance. Now he's sponsored 4 apprenticeships and committed his company's entire fleet to our program." One wealthy client playing at social responsibility, 27. "Wealthy clients," Tom corrected, bringing up more data, "all of whom appreciate that their luxury vehicles are being maintained by skilled technicians who've learned both traditional craftsmanship and modern techniques. They're not just paying for a service, they're investing in their communities." David Zhang, who'd been quietly observing, spoke up. "The numbers are impressive, Tom, but there are concerns about scaling." Tom had been waiting for this. He pulled up the next slide, a map dotted with existing luxury service centers. Each location has the potential to become a training hub. "We're not just maintaining luxury vehicles, we're creating a new generation of master technicians. The skills gap in high-end automotive maintenance is real, and it's growing. We can fill it while making premium service more accessible." The presentation continued, but Tom's mind drifted momentarily to that morning's scene at home. Lucy had been helping him practice his points, her own expertise growing as she split time between her studies and the training center. "Dad," she'd said, "remember what you told that first class of apprentices? Every car has a story, but every mechanic has one too. Tell them your story." Tom refocused on the boardroom. "When I was running my neighborhood shop, I saw something interesting. Luxury car owners would drive miles past premium service centers to come to us. Not because we were cheaper, though we were, but because we treated them like people, not walking bank accounts." He switched to a final slide, a split image. On one side, the gleaming Kingston Technologies Luxury Service Center. On the other, his old shop. "We don't have to choose between excellence and accessibility. We can have both." The room was quiet for a moment. Then David Zhang smiled. Bradford, remember when we thought electric vehicles would dilute our brand? Now they're 40% of our luxury division. Bradford's face reddened, but before he could respond, Tom's phone buzzed. A text from Lucy. 911 at training center. Need you. Excuse me, Tom said, standing. There's a situation that requires my attention. David, would you mind? Go. David nodded. We'll continue the discussion. Tom hurried to his car, his mind racing. The training center had never used their emergency code before. As he drove, another text came through. Mrs. Rodriguez's daughter's car. Something wrong with restoration. He found a small crowd gathered in the main bay of the training center. Lucy stood with the apprentices, all looking worried. In the center, Mrs. Rodriguez's daughter's car sat with its hood up, smoke wisping from the engine. What happened? Tom asked, already reaching for tools. We followed the restoration plan exactly, Lucy explained. But when we started it up, she gestured at the smoke. Tom leaned in, his experienced hands moving over the engine. Within minutes, he found the issue. A batch of defective parts, all bearing high-end manufacturer labels. Dad? Lucy's voice was tight. Those parts came from Kingston's premium supplier. Tom finished grimly. The same supplier Bradford Wells had insisted they use instead of Tom's recommended local manufacturer. He straightened up, making a decision. Lucy, call Sarah. She needs to know about this. Everyone else, gather round. You're about to learn why we always check parts ourselves, no matter who supplied them. As he began teaching, showing the apprentices how to identify the defects, Tom felt the familiar certainty that came with having tools in his hands. He might struggle with corporate politics and boardroom battles, but here, in this space between his old world and his new one, he knew exactly who he was. His phone buzzed again, a message from Sarah. Just landed, heard about meeting and parts issue. Bradford's supplier contract under review. Dinner tonight? We should talk. Tom looked around the training center at the eager faces of his students, at his daughter confidently leading the documentation process, at the bridge they were building between luxury and accessibility. Maybe he didn't fit perfectly in either world yet, but he was creating something new, something that carried his father's values into a future full of possibilities. Okay, everyone, he said, rolling up his sleeves. Let's show them how Martinez Auto Repair handles a challenge. The anonymous letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, slipped under the door of Tom's office at Kingston Technologies. The paper was expensive, the typing professional, but the message was pure poison. The board deserves to know the truth about Sarah Kingston's charity case and his questionable business practices. Documentation to follow. Choose. Resign quietly or face exposure. Tom read it 3 times, each word burning deeper into his consciousness. Through his office window, he could see the autumn fog rolling across the corporate campus, shrouding the buildings in grey uncertainty. His phone buzzed. Sarah asking if he was free for lunch. His finger hovered over the screen, torn between protecting her and sharing the burden. Before he could decide, David Zhang appeared in his doorway. Tom, got a minute? Something in David's expression made Tom's stomach tighten. He gestured to the chair across from his desk, discreetly sliding the anonymous letter into a drawer. There's been some discussion among certain board members, David began carefully. Questions about the training center's financial structure, specifically about parts procurement and cash flow during your time at the original Martinez Auto Repair. Tom felt the blood drain from his face. What kind of questions? Bradford Wells has presented documentation suggesting irregular accounting practices from your shop's final years. Missing invoices, cash transactions without proper documentation. Those were payment plans for customers who couldn't afford. Full repairs, Tom interrupted. Everything was recorded in the shop's ledger. My father started the practice 30 years ago. David held up a hand. I know, Tom, but Wells is painting it as potential money laundering, suggesting that's the Real reason you sold the shop so quickly when Sarah made her offer. The accusation hit Tom like a physical blow. He thought of his father's ledger, filled with careful notes about payment plans and deferrals, each entry a story of trust between the shop and its community. How could anyone twist that into something sinister? There's more, David continued. Someone's been digging into Lucy's medical records, questioning the timing of her acceptance into Stanford's experimental treatment program. Tom's hands clenched. Leave my daughter out of this. I'm on your side, Tom, but Wells has influenced several key board members. They're calling for an audit of both the training center and your personal finances. A knock at the door interrupted them. Lucy stood there, her face unusually pale. Dad, you need to see this. She held out her tablet, open to a local business news website. The headline made Tom's blood run cold. Kingston Technologies Community Program under investigation. Sources allege corruption and favoritism. It's all over social media, Lucy said quietly. They're saying you and Ms. Kingston. Tom took the tablet, scanning the article. Every quote was anonymous, every allegation carefully worded to imply wrongdoing while avoiding outright accusations. But the message was clear. Tom Martinez was a fraud. Sarah Kingston was compromised. And their entire program was built on corruption. The apprentices are watching this too, Lucy continued. Mrs. Rodriguez called. She's worried about her daughter being associated with the program. And Mr. Way, someone's been asking him questions about the old shop's payment records. David stood, his expression grave. I'll speak with our PR team, try to get ahead of this. Tom, I suggest you... Tom. Sarah's voice from the doorway made them all turn. She looked composed as ever, but Tom saw the tension in her shoulders. My office. Please, now. The walk to Sarah's office felt like crossing a minefield. Eyes followed them, whispers trailed behind, and Tom could almost feel the weight of Bradford Wells's satisfied smirk from behind his corner office door. Sarah closed her office door and activated the privacy screens, turning the glass walls opaque. For a moment she stood looking out at the fog-shrouded campus. I received an interesting email this morning. Someone claims to have evidence that we've been involved romantically since before the training center project, suggesting that's why I created the position for you. Sarah, I know. She turned to face him, her expression softening. Just like I know those payment plans at your shop were about helping people, not hiding money, but perception. Is reality in the corporate world? Tom finished. He'd heard her say it often enough. The board is calling an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning. They want both of us to address these allegations. She moved closer, lowering her voice. Tom, if they force me to choose between you and the company... The unfinished sentence hung between them, heavy with implications. Tom thought of all they'd built, the training center, the apprenticeship program, the bridge between luxury services and community needs. But he also thought of Sarah's legacy, her father's company, everything she'd worked for. I'll resign, he said quietly. Tonight, before the board meeting, say you were misled about my business practices, that you're shutting down the program. No. Sarah's voice was sharp. That's exactly what Wells wants. He's been trying to kill this program since day one. It threatens his whole approach to luxury services. Then what do we do? A hint of her usual confidence returned to Sarah's smile. We do what you taught the apprentices. We look deeper, we find the real problem, and we fix it. But first, she touched his arm gently. We need to talk about us. Tom met her eyes, seeing in them the same mix of determination and vulnerability he felt. Whatever was growing between them had been careful, professional, both of them too aware of appearances and consequences. But now, Dad, Lucy's voice through the intercom, something's happening at the training center. The local news is there, and Bradford Wells just arrived with some kind of documentation. He's talking to the apprentices. Sarah's expression hardened. He's trying to force our hand. She reached for her phone. David, implement Protocol 17, full media blackout, all channels. And Tom, She turned to him, her voice softening again. Whatever happens tomorrow, remember why I stopped. At your shop that night. Not everyone chooses kindness when it costs them something. As Tom headed for his car, he spotted Bradford Wells watching from his office window, phone to his ear. The fog had thickened, but through it, Tom could just make out the distant shape of the training center. His father's legacy transformed into something newer, but no less important. His phone buzzed with another anonymous text. Last chance to walk away quietly. Tom thought of his father's voice. Son, the hardest repairs are the ones most worth making. Starting his car, he headed toward the training center, toward the storm that had been brewing since that first helicopter landed in his old parking lot. Some things were worth fighting for, even if it meant risking everything. The training center's main bay had never felt so crowded or so hostile. News vans crowded the parking lot, their satellite dishes reaching up like accusing fingers. Inside, Bradford Wells stood amid a cluster of reporters, waving documents, as apprentices and community members watched in growing dismay. These records, Wells announced as Tom entered, show years of suspicious transactions at Martinez Auto Repair. Cash payments without proper documentation, parts ordered but never installed, labor hours that don't match the repairs claimed. Those were payment plans, Tom said firmly, making his way through the crowd. People who needed help. People who needed help? Wells' smile was shark-like. Like convicted money launderer Frank DeLuca? His repairs alone total over $50,000 in cash transactions? Tom felt the blood drain from his face. Frank DeLuca, a name he hadn't thought about in years. A regular customer who'd always paid in cash, always needed rush jobs on high-end cars. Tom's father had suspected something wasn't right, had been gathering evidence. Or perhaps, Wells continued, we should discuss the timing of your daughter's acceptance into Stanford's experimental treatment program. A program that normally has a 3-year waiting list, yet somehow had an immediate opening right after Miss Kingston took an interest in your operation. Lucy, standing near her office door, went pale. The whispers among the apprentices grew louder. That's enough. Sarah's voice cut through the murmurs. She stood in the doorway, David Zhang beside her, her presence commanding attention even in the chaos. Mr. Wells, I believe you've overstepped. Have I? Wells turned to face her. Or have you, Sarah? The board has called for your temporary suspension pending investigation. Your father built this company on integrity, not romantic entanglements and questionable charity projects. My father, Sarah said quietly, built this company on innovation and human dignity, two things you've never understood, Bradford, which is why you've been selling company secrets to our competitors for the past 5 years. The room went silent. Wells's confident smile flickered. What are you talking about? David stepped forward, holding up his tablet. Did you really think we wouldn't investigate you while you were so busy investigating Tom? Your offshore accounts aren't as well hidden as you thought. The defective parts, Tom said suddenly, pieces clicking into place. The ones you insisted we use for Mrs. Rodriguez's daughter's car. They weren't just defective, were they? They were counterfeits, supplied by Kingston's competitors to sabotage our luxury division. Sarah nodded. We've been tracking industrial espionage attempts for months, but we needed proof of who was behind it. She turned to the reporters. Would you like to see the real story here? About how a trusted executive tried to destroy a community program to cover his own corruption. Wells's face contorted. You have no proof. Actually, Lucy's voice rang out clear and strong. We do. She emerged from her office with a thick ledger, Tom's father's old record book. When Dad sold the shop, I kept Abuelo's ledger. The one where he documented everything about Frank DeLuca's suspicious activities. The one he was going to take to the police before... Tom's heart stopped. Before his heart attack. Lucy nodded, tears in her eyes. Abuelo was building a case. Every car, every repair, every cash payment. He documented it all. And he noted something interesting. Many of DeLuca's cars came straight from a warehouse owned by a shell company, a warehouse that until last year was registered to Bradford Wells. The reporter's cameras swiveled toward Wells, whose confidence had evaporated. David Zhang was already on his phone, speaking quietly to security. "You killed him," Tom said softly, the truth hitting him like a physical blow. The stress of discovering your connection to DeLuca's operation, the threatening calls he mentioned in his final weeks, that was you. "You can't prove any of that," Wells snarled, but his eyes darted toward the exit. "Maybe not," Sarah agreed, "but we can prove the industrial espionage, the counterfeiting operation, and your attempts to destroy this program to cover your tracks." "David?" David held up his tablet again. "Transfers from known shell companies to your private accounts, corresponding exactly with Kingston's leaked trade secrets. Emails to competitors about the training center's threat to your side business. And, of course, your interesting relationship with Mr. DeLuca's organization." "The board isn't suspending Sarah," Tom realized. "They're suspending you." And Sarah added, "They're particularly interested in your involvement in spreading false rumors about Tom and me, especially since those rumors seem designed to distract from your own activities." The next few minutes were a blur of activity. Security arrived to escort Wells out. Reporters swarmed Sarah and David, hungry for details of corporate espionage and corruption. The apprentices gathered around Lucy, examining the ledger that had unexpectedly vindicated everything they stood for. Tom stood in the midst of it all, processing. His father hadn't just been teaching him about cars and kindness. He'd been building a case against corruption that had finally, years later, served justice. "Tom," Sarah touched his arm gently. The reporters had moved outside following Wells's arrest. "There's something else you should know about Lucy's treatment program." He tensed, but she smiled. "She earned that spot. Dr. Chen, the program director, she's my cousin. She recognized Lucy's name when the application came in because I'd mentioned you both to her. But Lucy's case file spoke for itself. The timing was coincidence, nothing more." Relief flooded through him. "Sarah, I know." She squeezed his arm. "We have a lot to talk about. But first," she gestured to where Lucy stood with the apprentices, explaining her grandfather's careful documentation system. "I think someone else needs you more." Tom moved to join his daughter, picking up the ledger with trembling hands. His father's familiar handwriting filled the pages, not just repair notes and payment records, but a methodical documentation of justice deferred, finally served. "He'd be proud of you both," Sarah said softly, joining them. "Of how you've carried his legacy forward, of how you've built something new while staying true to his values." Outside, the news vans were already broadcasting the story of corporate corruption and community triumph. The apprentices gathered around Tom and Lucy, their faith restored and strengthened. Mrs. Rodriguez arrived with tears and hugs. Mr. Wei brought celebratory dumplings, and gradually the training center filled with the community that had never truly lost faith. "Dad," Lucy held out a particular page in the ledger. "Look what Abuelo wrote here in the margins." Tom read the faded words in his father's hand. "The truth, like a good engine, keeps running even when people stop believing in it. Our job is to maintain it until everyone can hear it running true again." Sarah's hand found his, their fingers intertwining naturally, professionally appropriate appearances, no longer their primary concern. The touch anchored him as his world shifted once again, not from poverty to privilege this time, but from vindication to purpose. "So," Sarah said, looking around at the vibrant scene of community and justice restored, "ready to get back to work? We have a training program to expand." Tom smiled, holding his father's ledger in one hand and Sarah's hand in the other, watching. Lucy explained diagnostic techniques to a fresh group of apprentices. "Yeah," he said softly, "I think we're just getting started." In the quiet of his new office, Tom held his father's resignation letter, the one Miguel Martinez had never had the chance to submit. Lucy had found it tucked inside the old ledger, dated just days before his fatal heart attack. The yellowed paper trembled slightly in his hands as he read, "After 30 years of serving this community, I must step away. Not because I've lost faith in honest work, but because I've discovered dishonesty that requires a different kind of justice." The words blurred as Tom's eyes misted over. A soft knock at his door made him look up. Sarah stood there holding 2 cups of coffee, not from the executive lounge, but from the small shop near his old garage. "Thought you might need this," she said, setting 1 cup on his desk. "The media circus is finally dying down, though the board wants to issue a formal apology for Wells's accusations." Tom carefully folded his father's letter, sliding it back into the ledger. "How are you holding up?" Sarah's professional mask slipped slightly, revealing the exhaustion beneath. "Dealing with the fallout. Wells's connections to our competitors went deeper than we thought. The audit team found evidence of industrial espionage going back almost 7 years, about as long as my father started noticing something wrong with DeLuca's cars," Tom noted quietly. "Your father was a good man, Tom. The kind of man who saw wrong and tried to right it, even when it cost him everything." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "The kind of man who raised a son to do the same." Through his window, Tom could see the training center where Lucy was leading today's class. The morning sun caught the newly restored sign, Martinez Training Center, a Kingston Technologies community initiative. Below it, his father's old motto, "Every car tells a story. Every repair changes a life." "The apprentices want to dedicate this year's graduation ceremony to him," Sarah continued. "They say his ledger taught them more about integrity than any technical manual could." Tom nodded, unable to speak for a moment. The past week had been a whirlwind of revelations, investigations, and media coverage. Wells' arrest had made national news, not just for corporate espionage, but for his suspected connection to his father's death. The evidence was circumstantial, too old for criminal charges, but the truth had finally emerged into the light. "I've been thinking," he said finally, "about everything my father built, everything we're building now, about legacy and justice. And second chances." Sarah settled into the chair across from him, her eyes warm with understanding. And I think it's time to expand the program. Not just luxury vehicles and job training, but something bigger, a foundation for automotive. Education, focusing on ethics as much as mechanics. The Miguel Martinez Foundation. "The board will approve it," Sarah said without hesitation. "After Wells, they understand the value of integrity in business. Besides," she smiled slightly, "they're a bit afraid of crossing your daughter now." Lucy's presentation on corporate responsibility went viral. Tom laughed softly, remembering Lucy's passionate speech about how her grandfather's example of ethical business practices could transform modern corporate culture. At 16, fighting her illness with newfound strength, she'd stood before the board and reminded them that true luxury wasn't about price tags, it was about values. "We'll need to step back from our personal relationship for a while," Sarah added gently. "Let the foundation establish itself without any hint of impropriety." "I know." Tom reached across the desk, squeezing her hand briefly. "Some things are worth waiting for. My father taught me that too." Outside his office, the day was beginning in earnest. Apprentices arriving at the training center, executives heading to meetings. 2 worlds that had seemed so far apart now finding common ground. In the wake of truth revealed, on his desk, next to the coffee Sarah had brought, his father's old keys caught the morning light, a reminder that sometimes the biggest revelations came from the smallest acts of integrity. "Ready to get back to work?" Sarah asked, standing. Her professional mask was back in place, but her eyes held promises for the future. Tom picked up his father's ledger, running his fingers over the worn cover. "Yeah," he said softly, "I think Dad would want that." As Sarah left, Tom opened the ledger one last time, adding his own note beneath his father's final entry. The truth, like love, finds its own time. But justice, like a well-maintained engine, requires constant attention and honest hands. The empty toolbox sat on Tom's workbench like a metaphor for his current state of mind. 3 weeks after Wells's arrest, the training center stood quiet, its normal bustle replaced by the sterile efficiency of corporate auditors. Every transaction, every repair, every decision was being scrutinized under the harsh light of investigation. "They're just being thorough, Dad," Lucy said from her wheelchair, her condition flaring up again from the stress of recent events. She'd insisted on coming to the center, despite her doctor's recommendations for rest, making sure Wells didn't compromise anything else. Tom ran his hand along the worn edge of his father's workbench. The auditors had tagged everything with yellow markers: asset number 647, vintage workbench; asset number 648, tool storage unit. His father's legacy reduced to inventory numbers and depreciation values. Mr. Martinez, one of the corporate accountants, approached, tablet in hand. "We've found some irregularities in the apprenticeship funding." What kind of irregularities? The word made his stomach clench. The program's been exceeding its allocated budget by providing additional support to students, transportation stipends, meal allowances, family assistance programs. None of these were in the original proposal. Tom straightened up. "Those kids can't learn if they're hungry or worried about how their families will manage without their income. My father understood that. It's why he kept spare groceries in the shop's back room." The accountant's expression remained neutral. "Nevertheless, without proper authorization, the authorization came from me." Sarah's voice cut through the tension. She stood in the doorway, looking tired but determined. Check the discretionary fund allocations, but even her presence couldn't fully dispel the heavy atmosphere. The training center's walls, once covered with photos of proud graduates and community events, now stood bare, everything catalogued and stored as potential evidence. The only sound was the quiet clicking of laptops as auditors combed through years of records. "They're shutting down the community outreach programs," Lucy said quietly, scrolling through her phone. "Social media's blowing up. Mrs. Rodriguez's daughter. She's saying she feels betrayed, used as a publicity stunt." Tom felt each word like a physical blow. The community's trust, built over decades by his father and carefully maintained by him, was unraveling. Wells might be gone, but his poison lingered. "It's temporary," Sarah assured them, but her voice held a note of uncertainty. Once the audit is complete, what?" Tom interrupted, his frustration finally boiling over. The heart of this program was never about corporate procedures or profit margins. It was about people, community, the things my father lived for and died protecting. The silence that followed felt heavy with unspoken tensions. Through the windows, Tom could see news vans still parked across the street, hungry for any hint of further scandal. The story had evolved from corporate corruption to human interest, with tabloids speculating about his relationship with Sarah and questioning every decision they'd made. "The board wants to restructure the program," Sarah admitted finally. "Streamline it, make it more corporate." "You mean strip away everything that makes it special?" Lucy's voice was quiet but firm. "Turn it into just another job training program." Tom looked around the space that had once hummed with life and purpose. The empty bays, where apprentices had learned not just about cars, but about dignity in work. The quiet classroom, where his father's principles had been passed on to a new generation. The community gathering space, where barriers between social classes had slowly dissolved over shared meals and shared purposes. His father's voice seemed to echo in the emptiness. "Son, sometimes you have to take a step back to move forward." Sarah moved closer, her professional demeanor softening. "Tom, we haven't lost everything. The foundation is still proceeding. Wells's conviction has actually increased interest in ethical business practices. We just need to weather the storm." He smiled sadly. That's what my father used to say about tough times. Weather the storm. Maintain your course. Trust in the work. Lucy wheeled herself to the old workbench, picking up a wrench from the toolbox. Remember what you taught us, Dad. Every repair starts with proper diagnosis. Maybe this is just part of the repair process. The three of them stood in the fading afternoon light, surrounded by the skeletal remains of their dreams. Through the window, Tom could see the sun setting behind the city skyline. The same view his father had watched for 30 years, finding hope even in the darkest moments. "Okay," he said finally, taking the wrench from Lucy. "Then let's diagnose. Let's figure out what's broken, what's just bent, and what we can salvage." It wasn't much, but it was a start. Sometimes his father had taught him that's all you needed. The security footage played silently on the conference room screen. Bradford Wells, late at night, accessing the training center's computer systems. David Zhang paused the playback, highlighting timestamps that matched suspicious data transfers. He wasn't just selling corporate secrets, David explained to the gathered board members. He was systematically undermining the training program from the start. Altered financial reports, manipulated performance metrics, fabricated student complaints, all designed to make the program appear inefficient and corrupt. Tom sat beside Sarah, watching the faces of board members as understanding dawned. The past week had been a whirlwind of discoveries, each revelation peeling back another layer of Wells's deception. The community assistance programs Mr. Martinez implemented, David continued, pulling up new data. They actually reduced dropout rates by 85% and increased job placement success by 67%. Wells's altered reports hid these achievements. Lucy, attending her first board meeting as the newly appointed student advocacy director, spoke up. "We found something else in Abuelo's ledger, a pattern of VIN numbers from Mr. Wells's operation, cars, that passed through our shop years ago. Cross-referencing them with current Kingston Technologies service records." She nodded to one of her apprentices, who displayed a complex web of connections on the screen. "These same vehicles are now showing up in luxury service centers across the country, all with suspiciously similar maintenance issues. It's not just corporate espionage. It's a systematic attempt to undermine consumer confidence in high-end vehicle maintenance, which explains Wells's desperate opposition to our democratized service model," Sarah added. "An informed community of skilled mechanics would have eventually exposed his entire operation." The boardroom fell silent as the implications sank in. Tom thought about his father, meticulously documenting discrepancies, sensing a larger pattern, but never living to see it revealed. Now, years later, his careful notes had helped unravel a conspiracy that stretched from neighborhood garages to corporate boardrooms. "There's more," Lucy said softly. "The community hasn't really lost faith in us. They've been afraid." She played a recording, Mrs. Rodriguez tearfully explaining how men in suits had pressured her daughter to denounce the program. Similar stories emerged from other community members, all describing subtle threats and manipulation. Wells's people, David confirmed, using the audit as cover to intimidate program participants. Tom felt Sarah's hand find his under the table, a brief squeeze of support. Above them, the screen showed security footage of the training center during its peak. Apprentices learning, community members gathering, barriers breaking down between social classes. The true vision of what they'd built, before fear and doubt had emptied its halls. The board chairman cleared his throat. "Ms. Kingston, Mr. Martinez, it appears we owe you both an apology, and the community as well." He looked around the table, receiving nods of agreement. "What do you need to get the program running again?" Sarah sat forward. "Full autonomy for the Miguel Martinez Foundation, independent oversight and," she smiled slightly, "a significant expansion of the community support initiatives that Tom's father pioneered." "Done," the chairman said, without hesitation. "Mr. Martinez, anything to add?" Tom thought about his father's words. Every repair needs the right tools. Yes, he said. I want to reinstate every apprentice who was forced out, full scholarships, backdated stipends, and a public acknowledgement of their integrity. These kids stood by us even when it cost them opportunities. They've more than earned their place. Lucy's phone buzzed with incoming messages. Dad, look! The apprentices are spreading the news. Mr. Way is reopening the community dinner program. Mrs. Rodriguez's daughter. She's asking to return to the training program. The chairman stood. I think we've seen enough. David, release. Our findings to the media. Ms. Kingston, Mr. Martinez, get your program running again. The board will handle any remaining legal issues with Wells and his associates. As they left the boardroom, Tom noticed Sarah hiding a smile. What? Just thinking about that night with the flat tire, she said. How different everything might have been if I'd driven another route, if you'd already closed up shop. Or if you'd let me charge you for the repair, Tom added with a chuckle. Lucy wheeled alongside them, her health already improving with the reduced stress. You know what Abuelo would say. There are no coincidences in a well-maintained world, just parts working together the way they're supposed to. Outside, the setting sun painted the training center in warm light. Through the windows, Tom could see apprentices already gathering, drawn by Lucy's group text. The empty toolbox that had symbolized their lowest point now waited to be refilled, not just with tools, but with renewed purpose and vindicated trust. Ready to restart the engine? Sarah asked softly. Tom watched his daughter roll ahead to greet the returning apprentices, her grandfather's ledger held proudly in her lap. Yeah, he said. I think we're finally firing on all cylinders. The blueprint spread across Tom's new office told a story of transformation. The training center would expand, incorporating 3 adjacent buildings. The original shop space, his father's legacy, would remain the heart of the operation, but now surrounded by modern classrooms, community spaces, and state-of-the-art service bays. The contractors can start next week, Sarah said, tracing the plans with her finger. Though I think Lucy's additions are my favorite part. Tom smiled, looking at his daughter's careful annotations. She'd insisted on adding features that reflected her grandfather's philosophy. A community dining area, a childcare center for student parents, even a small museum showcasing the history of automotive repair in the neighborhood. Speaking of Lucy, he said, have you seen the curriculum she developed? Sarah pulled up the document on her tablet. The Miguel Martinez Ethics in Automotive Service program combined technical training with business ethics, community engagement, and sustainable practices. It was already drawing attention from technical schools across the country. The Stanford doctors say her health improvements aren't just from the new treatment, Sarah noted softly. Having purpose, feeling valued, it's made a significant difference. Through the window, they could see Lucy leading a tour group through the existing facility. Not just potential students this time, but corporate executives from other companies, interested in replicating their model of community-integrated luxury services. Mr. Martinez? Jennifer appeared in the doorway. Mrs. Rodriguez is here with the first group of returning apprentices. The main bay was filling up with familiar faces. Students who'd been forced out by Wells's intimidation now returned, greeted by those who'd stayed. Mr. Way had brought dumplings, setting up in the break room that would soon become a proper community kitchen. Mrs. Rodriguez hugged everyone in sight, tears flowing freely. Before we begin, Tom addressed the gathered crowd, I want to say something. He pulled out his father's old keys, the ones that had opened this shop for 30 years. When my father started this business, he had 2 goals: to fix cars and to help people. Sometimes those were the same thing. Sometimes helping meant payment plans, or teaching basic maintenance, or just listening to someone's troubles while changing their oil. He held up the keys. These opened more than just a shop. They opened opportunities, opened hearts, opened futures. Today, we're not just reopening, We're expanding that vision. Sarah stepped forward, her professional demeanor softened by genuine emotion. Kingston Technologies is fully committed to the Miguel Martinez Foundation. Every apprentice will receive full certification, job placement assistance, and ongoing support. But more importantly, you'll learn what Tom's father knew, that true success comes from lifting others as you rise. Lucy wheeled to her father's side, holding up the old ledger. And we're going to document everything, just like Abuelo did. Every success story, every community impact, every life changed. Not just for accountability, but for inspiration. The energy in the room was electric. Apprentices gathered around the blueprint, excitedly discussing the changes. Community members offered suggestions, drawing on decades of neighborhood knowledge. Kingston's corporate team members mixed easily with local mechanics, barriers dissolving in shared purpose. Tom. Sarah touched his arm gently. There's something else. She nodded toward the entrance, where a familiar figure stood hesitantly. Frank. DeLuca's daughter clutched her purse nervously. Mr. Martinez, I heard about what happened. About Mr. Wells and your father. She swallowed hard. Dad told me everything before he passed. How your father tried to help him get out. Tried. To protect him from Wells's organization. I found these in his things. She held out a stack of papers, photographs, notes, documentation of Wells's operation from the inside. Maybe it's too late for court, but people should know the truth about your father, about what he tried to do. Tom took the papers with trembling hands, more pieces of the puzzle, more validation of his father's integrity. Thank you, he managed. Would you like to see what we're building here? As Lucy led Frank's daughter on a tour, Sarah watched Tom carefully. You okay? He nodded, looking around at the vibrant scene. Apprentices installing new equipment, community members planning programs, his father's vision expanding beyond anything they'd imagined. You know what Dad used to say about major repairs? What's that? Sometimes you have to completely rebuild an engine to make it run better than new. He smiled, tucking the new evidence carefully into his father's ledger. I think that's what we're doing here, rebuilding something stronger, better, but still running on the same principles. Sarah's hand found his, professional discretion yielding to genuine connection. Around them, the training center hummed with renewed purpose. Through the windows, the setting sun painted the scene in shades of promise, as if Miguel Martinez himself were offering his blessing on this new chapter of his legacy. The board meeting agenda sat heavy in Tom's hands. Final review, Miguel Martinez Foundation integration with Kingston Technologies global operations. 6 months of rebuilding had led to this moment, the last hurdle between their local success and international expansion. They're ready for us, Sarah said softly, standing in his office doorway. She looked as polished as ever, but Tom had learned to read the subtle signs of tension in her posture. Is Lucy already there? She insisted, on presenting the community impact data herself. Sarah's pride was evident. The doctors say her latest test results are the best they've seen. They walked together through the corporate headquarters, their steps synchronized by months of shared purpose. The training center's success had exceeded everyone's expectations, but expansion brought new challenges. Not everyone was convinced that a community-based model could work on a global scale. The boardroom fell silent as they entered. Lucy sat at the far end, her wheelchair now more of a convenience than a necessity on her harder days. The improvement in her health reflected the program's success, personal transformation mirroring professional achievement. Let's begin, the chairman announced. Ms. Kingston, Mr. Martinez, you're proposing to expand the Miguel Martinez Foundation model internationally. Some board members have concerns about diluting the luxury brand, said Victoria Chen, head of global marketing. Our premium services command premium prices because of exclusivity. This democratization approach has increased our market share by 30%. Lucy interrupted, projecting data onto the screen. But more importantly, look at these customer loyalty metrics. The graphs told a compelling story. Luxury car owners who engaged with the community program showed unprecedented brand loyalty. Their satisfaction scores weren't just higher, they were transforming into brand advocates. It's not just about maintaining luxury vehicles, Tom added, thinking of his father's wisdom. It's about maintaining relationships. Every car tells a story, but more importantly, every customer wants to be part of a larger narrative. Sarah stepped forward, her presentation confident but grounded. We're not just selling premium service anymore. We're offering membership in a community that bridges social divides through shared values. Our luxury customers aren't just getting their cars maintained, they're participating in positive social change. At significant cost, Victoria noted. The community support programs, the apprenticeship scholarships, the family assistance initiatives have resulted in a net profit increase of 45%, David Zhang interjected, displaying new financial data. It turns out that ethical business practices and community investment are extremely good for the bottom line. Lucy wheeled to the center of the room, her grandfather's ledger open on her lap. When my grandfather started documenting discrepancies in his shop, he wasn't just tracking criminal activity, he was demonstrating that integrity and profit aren't mutually exclusive. Every entry in this ledger shows how doing the right thing ultimately serves everyone's interests. The room grew quiet as Lucy shared story after story. Luxury car owners choosing their services specifically because of the community impact, apprentices becoming successful entrepreneurs, lives transformed through the combination of opportunity and integrity. But global expansion, Victoria persisted. Different cultures, different social structures, already in progress, Sarah revealed, triggering a worldwide map. While we've been proving the model here, David's team has been conducting pilot programs in selected international markets. The results, the data was undeniable. From Tokyo to Dubai, Berlin to São Paulo, the combination of premium service and community investment was revolutionizing the luxury automotive sector. But more than that, it was transforming communities. My father, Tom said into the thoughtful silence, used to say that the true measure of success isn't how high you climb, but how many people you bring with you. This program proves that luxury and accessibility can coexist, that excellence and opportunity can reinforce each other. Lucy pulled up one final slide, a simple photograph of the original Martinez auto repair shop next to an architect's rendering of the new global training center planned for Singapore. This isn't just about cars anymore, she said softly. It's about proving that my grandfather's values, integrity, community, opportunity, work everywhere. That doing good business and doing good aren't separate goals. The chairman looked around the room, reading the shifting expressions. I think we've seen enough, unless there are any final objections. Victoria Chen closed her laptop slowly. I withdraw my concerns. But I want to be involved in the marketing strategy. This story, people need to hear it properly. As the board members filed out, Sarah caught Tom's hand beneath the table. Lucy beamed from her place at the end of the room, clutching her grandfather's ledger like a talisman. They'd done it. Miguel Martinez's legacy wouldn't just survive, it would transform an entire industry, one community at a time. Ready for the real work to begin? Sarah asked softly. Tom thought of his father's favorite saying about big jobs. The hardest turn of the wrench is always the first one. After that, it's all about staying true to the repair. Yeah, he smiled, watching Lucy already deep in discussion. With Victoria about global outreach programs, I think we're ready to turn that wrench. The new company logo gleamed on the wall of the expanded training center, a perfect fusion of Kingston Technology's modern aesthetic and the simple, honest lines of the original Martinez auto repair sign. Below it, apprentices from 3 continents gathered for the first Global Leadership Summit. their diverse conversations filling the space with energy and purpose. "Dad, they're ready for you," Lucy called from the doorway of his office. At 18, she stood tall and strong, her wheelchair now rarely needed. The experimental treatments, combined with her passionate involvement in the Foundation's work, had led to what her doctors called a remarkable recovery. Tom straightened his tie, still not quite comfortable in executive attire, even after all this time. The past year had transformed their local success into a global movement. The Miguel Martinez Foundation now operated in 20 countries, each center adapting his father's principles to local needs while maintaining the core vision of community-integrated luxury services. "Mr. Martinez," a young apprentice from the Singapore Center approached, bowing slightly. "Your father's methods for building community trust. They've revolutionized how we approach luxury vehicle maintenance in Asia. Even our most exclusive clients now participate in our community programs." Similar stories echoed throughout the gathering. A German apprentice described how their program had bridged socio-economic divides in Stuttgart. A team from Dubai shared how they'd adapted the community support model to serve both oil executives and migrant workers. Each success story validated his father's belief that integrity and excellence could coexist. Sarah found him amid the crowd, her presence still sending a quiet thrill through him after all these months of working together. Their relationship had grown naturally, strengthened by shared values and mutual respect. The board had long since accepted their personal connection, seeing how it enhanced, rather than compromised, their professional effectiveness. "The new numbers just came in," she said, her eyes bright with excitement. "The Foundation's impact metrics are off the charts. But more importantly," she gestured to where Lucy was leading a workshop on ethical business practices, her grandfather's ledger still serving as a teaching tool. "She's amazing," Tom said softly. "Dad would be so proud of both of you," Sarah corrected, touching his arm. "Look what you've built here." The training center had become a global headquarters for their movement. The original service bays remained active, now staffed by a mix of local apprentices and international students. The community kitchen had expanded into a culinary training program, with Mr. Wei teaching traditional recipes alongside modern business skills. Mrs. Rodriguez's daughter had returned from college to manage their growing scholarship foundation. "Ms. Kingston, Mr. Martinez," Victoria Chen approached with a tablet. "The new marketing campaign is ready for your approval." The screen displayed images that would soon appear worldwide. Luxury car owners working alongside apprentices, community meals bringing together executives and mechanics, success stories from every corner of the globe. But at the heart of each advertisement was a simple message. "Every car tells a story. Every community writes its future." "Perfect," Sarah nodded. "Though I think we need one addition." She whispered something to Victoria, who smiled and made a note. A commotion at the entrance drew their attention. David Zhang was leading a group of international executives through the facility. "As you can see," he was saying, "the Miguel Martinez model proves that ethical business practices and luxury services aren't just compatible, they're mutually reinforcing." Tom watched as Lucy seamlessly took over the tour, explaining how her grandfather's principles had evolved into a global standard for automotive excellence. The executives' initial skepticism visibly melted as she showed them concrete results: increased profits, unprecedented customer loyalty, and transformed communities. "Mr. Martinez," a voice behind him made him turn. Frank DeLuca's daughter stood, and they're now running her own legitimate automotive business. "I wanted you to have this." She handed him a framed photograph of his father, one he'd never seen before. "Dad took it the day your father confronted Wells. Said he'd never seen someone so brave, standing up for what's right no matter the cost." Tom held the photo carefully, seeing in his father's expression the same determination that now shone in Lucy's eyes as she championed their cause. The same integrity that had drawn Sarah to his small shop on that fateful night. The same values that were now reshaping an entire industry. Sarah's hand found his as they watched their global community in action. Apprentices sharing skills across cultural boundaries. Luxury car owners engaging in meaningful social change. Communities rising together, proving that success meant more than profit margins. "Oh," Sarah added with a smile, "wait until you see what they've added to the sign outside." Tom looked through the window, his heart catching at the new addition beneath the company logo. In memory of Miguel Martinez, every repair fixes more than just a car. His father's keys hung on the wall of his office, retired now but never forgotten. Their worn surface had guided thousands of hands toward a better future, one turn of the wrench at a time. The wedding ring caught the afternoon light as Tom slipped it onto Sarah's finger. They'd chosen to hold the ceremony in the training center's main bay, now transformed into an elegant venue that somehow maintained its honest, working-class heart. Tools gleamed on their wall mountings, now decorated with white ribbons and flowers, while the sophisticated crowd sat on a mixture of restored vintage chairs and modern seating. Lucy stood as their officiant, her grandfather's ledger serving as her podium, her voice strong and clear as she addressed the gathered guests. "My grandfather believed that the strongest bonds are forged through acts of kindness, maintained through integrity, and tested by challenges. Today, we celebrate a union that proves him right." The guests represented every facet of their journey. Apprentices from around the world, board members in elegant attire, local community members who'd supported them from the beginning. Mr. Wei had catered the reception, his dumplings served, alongside gourmet hors d'oeuvres. Mrs. Rodriguez dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief while her daughter, now the Foundation's Global Education Director, recorded everything for their international branches. "From a chance encounter with a flat tire," Lucy continued, "grew not just love, but a movement that has transformed thousands of lives. My father and Sarah have shown us that true luxury isn't about exclusivity, it's about excellence shared, opportunities created, and communities united." Tom gazed at Sarah, seeing in her eyes the same mix of professional strength and personal tenderness that had gradually transformed their working relationship into something deeper. She'd understood from that first night that his father's legacy wasn't just about fixing cars. It was about fixing broken connections between people. "By the power vested in me," Lucy's voice carried clearly through the space, "and in honor of Miguel Martinez, whose values guide us still, I now pronounce you husband and wife." As they kissed, the assembled crowd erupted in applause. Through the open bay doors, Tom could see the sunset painting the sky in shades of promise. The fresh paint on the building's exterior gleamed. Martinez Kingston Global Training Centers, where every repair builds community. At the reception, David Zhang raised his glass to the union of not just two people, but two philosophies, proving that doing good and doing well can be the same thing. Sarah squeezed Tom's hand as Lucy prepared to speak. Their daughter, 4, that's truly what she'd become to Sarah, stood without assistance, her health now a testament to the power of purpose and proper care. "Abuelo had a saying," Lucy began, her voice thick with emotion. "He said that love, like a well-maintained engine, runs best when every part works in harmony with the others. Today we celebrate that harmony, in marriage, in business, and in the communities we serve worldwide." As the evening wound down, Tom and Sarah slipped away to his old office, now a museum piece within the modern facility. His father's keys hung in their honored place, while photos of global training centers lined the walls. "Ready for our next chapter?" Sarah asked softly. Tom drew her close, their rings matching the gleam in their eyes. "Dad always said every ending is just a new beginning in disguise." Through the window, they could see the future they'd built together. A world where kindness created opportunity, where integrity met innovation, and where love, like a perfectly tuned engine, powered everything. 1 year later, a familiar scene played out at the Martinez Kingston Global Training Center. A woman stood beside her luxury car, steam rising from under the hood. But this time, it was Lucy who approached her, walking confidently across the parking lot her grandfather had once swept every morning. "Having trouble?" she asked, her father's warmth in her voice and her mother's grace in her stance. Behind her, a new class of apprentices watched, representing 6 continents and countless dreams. In his office overlooking the scene, Tom held Sarah close as they watched their daughter in action. On his desk, a family photo showed 3 generations of legacy: Miguel's portrait, Tom and Sarah's wedding day, and Lucy's recent graduation from Stanford's business school. The Martinez family tradition lived on, one repair, one kindness, one changed life at a time.